Got to get them LEDs, bro.
Man, I don't have time for all that. I'm in this booth too much as it is. I can't make it too damn comfortable. My wife's already like, get up and walk. Read your Apple Watch. It says, get up and breathe. I'm like, okay.
That's going to end up being our intro. Oh, my God. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of the Magus Brothers podcast. I am Tyler, and with me always is the wonderful...
Hey, y'all, I'm Feyerbrand, and thank you for joining us on episode 12. Now, episode 12, Final Fantasy 12. Weird game. We'll get into that one of these days. I love it. I don't think Tyler's ever played it. But anyways, we're going to fix that one of these days. Don't worry, everybody. But today we have something absolutely incredible to share with everybody. This is something that I know Tyler has wanted to do for a very long time and is finally here. So I'm going to let him make this introduction. So take it away, Tyler.
We are joined by the one, the only, the kind and amazing John Eric Bentley, the voice of Barret. Say hello.
Episode 12.
Beautiful.
What up, everybody?
We are so happy to have you on the show, John. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be on the show. Thank you so much. This is a long time coming. We've talked about this for quite some time, you and I, Ty.
Yeah, you know, in the early days when the podcast was just an egg in my brain, I was like, John, one of these days.
Why did you say I'm going to do a podcast? And my son's going to say hi to you in real life and everything. So, yeah, it's just awesome. It's coming into fruition, baby. It's
Did
real.
The podcast got you on the show, got to say hello to you in real life. I'm ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, all of them. Bucket list complete. Ish. Because we still got to do the show.
Yeah, let's get this rolling. So, if everyone unfamiliar with John, as I mentioned, he is the voice of Barret Wallace in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. He's got a long list of credits, but as we are a Final Fantasy podcast, we are primarily going to focus on his work with Barret. John, you have played Final Fantasy VII back when it released, so you're not new to Final Fantasy coming into this with no context. You've played this game.
Yes. When I was younger and much more better looking and not as hairy. Yes, I did. I got all this facial hair now. It's like, okay, COVID does all that to you. But yes, I did. Back in the day when it first came out, it was actually one of the first RPGs that I played. And I was amazed by it because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's got a black character. I've never seen a black character in an RPG. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just a black character, but hey, this is like Japanese anime. This is really cool. This is stuff I used to read. And so I was really, really happy to play it and then find out how deep the plot was. And it literally introduced me to the RPG platform. And I'm like, this is really cool. I'm just going to find out how many of these I can play. So, and it became, I think it was Wild Arms was the next one that I played. And
that's
a great game. Remember, I tried and played so many different platforms. And I was just like, I'm falling in love with this. This is great. So, yeah, I played when I was younger. And I still love it.
And it's funny. It's not funny that you mention it, but coincidentally, not just me. I think for a lot of people our age picking up that game for the first time back when it first released, Barret was the first black character I had ever experienced as a video game. Or in a video game, not as a video game, but in a video game. And it had never really dawned on me, but I was introduced to the game by a neighbor, and I lived in an apartment complex, and I'm pretty sure he let me borrow Final Fantasy 7 and 8 and his PlayStation.
You never gave it back. Time. Tell the truth, Ty. Tell the truth.
No, I 100% gave it back. I gave it back. I got my own PlayStation, but he was black. And I had never put the two together because, of course, I was young and, I wasn't aware of the nuances in society and race and that type of thing. But, looking back on it, that may have been his first introduction to a black character in a video game. And what a great, amazing character to be introduced to as like your first character and to say, hey, like, there's a black character in a game I'm playing. Like, how great is that for it to be Barret?
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it was awesome because he's so many different things, and that makes me really happy to hear. And shout out to your parents for raising you the right way to not have any kind of bias or any kind of foolishness going on. That's pretty cool, especially in the society that we live in today. But yeah, man, that's pretty doggone awesome that that character was a character that spoke to so many people. You know what I mean? And I'm just thrilled to be able to have that job, to have the privilege of being Barret and trying to do it the right way.
And so this was, Final Fantasy VII came out in 1997, and here we are 20 plus years later, and you've had a whole life and career and doing voice acting and actual acting and so many other things, and then you got the role of Barret. And speak to that experience of this was a character you encountered that affected you when you were younger, and then coming full circle to be able to play it again. How did that happen and come to fruition?
Well, I had an audition. Rita, who was the casting director, said, "Hey, I got a role coming up. Would you like to audition for it?" I'm like, "Of course, I'll audition for any and everything, because I like to work and I love doing what I do." And she said, "Okay, well, this is for this character." And she didn't kind of really go into great detail about it until she sent me the specs, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, this is Barret. This is Barret from Final Fantasy, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, you know about Barret?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this was one of the first games I played, the RPGs." And I went through the whole thing. And she's like, "Okay, cool. So the audition is due by such and such." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll be done tonight." And so, I was like, "Okay, well, I know how I had Barret in my brain, from the little side-scrolling letters and symbols that he had when we were growing up." And I said, "Well, this is how I think his voice would be." And I think that a lot of us interpreted, especially because of the time, interpreted Barret to sound more like a Mr. T character. And, that's who was popular at the time. I was like, "Well, I don't want him to sound like Mr. T. I love Mr. T, and I think that a lot of the stuff he's done has been unbelievably fabulous, and he's a great dude. He really is." And so, but I didn't want Barret to sound like what I thought was a caricature or something that people would view as a stereotype. I just didn't want to do that. And so I was like, all right, well, these are different ways I can play this guy's voice. And the reason I had different ways is because I'm like, well, Barret actually sounds like one of my uncles. So I'm going to play Barret like Uncle John. And then I was like, nah, I don't like that. And I said, well, I'm going to try to do Barret like Uncle Ollie. And I was like, okay, well, how about this? How about I just mix the two and then do his voice that way? And so that's how I kind of came up with his character. It sounds like two of my uncles, and I'm like, all right, this is how they talked when I was coming up. This is how I'm going to portray him. And that's how I came up with it. I had like a bunch of different ways to do it. And when I went to the audition, I was like, well, you can do it this way. Well, you can do it this way, and you can do it this way. And they're like, how about you just let's narrow it down? And I'm like, all right, perfect. Let's narrow it down. And we did, and that's the result that we came up with is what you hear in the game. Was
it difficult for you, or did you feel intimidated? Because this was a character that did already have a voice actor behind him with the previous compilation. Bo Billingsley did the voice for Barret in Advent Children and in Dirge. Mm-hmm. And even though the voiced lines in both of in that movie and in those games, they weren't anywhere near as expansive as what you have done with Remake. And I don't mean to discredit anything that he did, but coming into Remake, did you reference his performance at all? Did you look back? Did you feel intimidated or anything to honor previous expectations?
I did not. First of all, Bo is the man. Bo is like, you got to understand, Bo did projects that I wanted to do when I got out to LA. He's an incredible actor. He's a really great guy. I got to meet him, spend time with him when I was doing a play called Black and Blue Scene. It was actually written for Bo Billingsley. But Bo at the time was going through, I think he was going through treatments, or he was sick at one point. And so he wasn't physically able to do the role. And so the guy, Jerry Mayer, asked me to audition, and he told me, hey, this was originally Bo's part. I'm like, man, I'm not taking anything away from Bo. I'm a fan. I'm like, Bo is like a mentor to me. He's incredible. And Jerry's like, yeah, well, he's not going to be able to do this. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll audition. And we wound up getting it. And I got to meet Bo one night he came to the show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was an honor. And I'm like, Jerry, can we go out with Bo? Can we, I felt like a little kid. I'm like, can we go have dinner with Bo? And Bo was like, sure. So we went to the restaurant next door and we talked. And I didn't know at the time that Bo, I knew all of his work that he had done in Cowboy Bebop, but I didn't know anything about Bo doing anything in Final Fantasy, because let's be honest, Final Fantasy, whereas you're saying, yeah, he was the original character. He was the original voice for those films, so to speak, for the episode, or for the film, the short films that they did. The video game never had a voiceover character, was never voiceover. So when everybody's saying, well, you should use the original voices, there were no original voices. There weren't any original voices. The voices that you saw were voices from the films that were made. Advent Children, Dirge. When I had to do all the research for Barret, that took me to that. I'm like, okay. And it wasn't until that I, after, of course, I did the play, that I went, oh, Bo did this character. Oh my gosh. Da, 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 da. But there was no voice for the video game. It was all side-scrolling letters. You had to read to play the characters back in 96, 97. There was no voice. So for people to say, you need to use the original cast, there was no original cast. The original cast was in a film. So I get what people are saying, but this is a video game. So with Square Enix deciding to say, hey, we're going to do this this way, I was thrilled to be able to do it. I'm not taking anything away from Bo. Like I said, I have the utmost respect for him, but I did not watch or see what he had done with the voice. And then after I did it, or after I started recording, I looked at one of the videos after I had already established what I was doing. I think it was Advent Children. And I was like, well, where's Bo? Where is he? And it wasn't until like the middle or halfway through the end, 3/4 through, that you see Barret doing anything. And it's all efforts to the most part. And you can't hear him over the sound effects and the music hardly. So I'm like, that was dog. They didn't even let Bo do his thing. Bo was an incredible actor, voice-over talent actor, period. And I'm like, well, that wasn't established. You know what I mean? So
right.
Yeah, and I could see some people having opinions on a character, like even within Advent Children alone, before we look into any other media, where it's like you may have an opinion or a certain affection for the voice of Cloud or Tifa, characters that are super prevalent and talk for the most part of that entire film. That Cloud for the longest time was the voice I heard when I heard Cloud. But for someone like Barret, who had, again, not to discredit anything Bo did, but who had very few lines in Advent Children because they didn't let Bo do his thing. And I don't remember Dirge very well. That's just, I didn't have a voice for Barret in my head. And for the longest time, because of like you yourself mentioned, with the original Final Fantasy VII, Barret in the narrative of the game is very, very nuanced in a deep character, but the way he comes off when he talks is very much a caricature of Mr. T, and that's kind of the voice I had in my head for him. So when you came and we got the trailer and then we got the demo and I got to hear Barret, essentially it was like hearing Barret for the first time for myself, and far exceeded any expectation I had, because the voice cast for Remake is just hands down phenomenal. Every single person does an amazing job.
Oh yeah, folks worked it, man. It was an honor to be a part, to work with of that project, to work with us, everybody. I mean, everybody, even the characters that were non-playable characters were just. I mean, the talent was just unreal.
Between Brianna, Britt, Cody, Tyler, you, and then even with the characters that didn't have as much time, but like Vic and Austin, those are the voices that I hear for these characters now in my head. It was so well done.
Good. Well, thanks Square Enix for the casting. Man, I'm glad to hear that they put their foot in it. It's hard to mess up something that's this beautiful and this well cast. I mean, visually it's beautiful. Audibly, it's unbelievably stunning. There's just so many elements that go along with this particular piece. It's an honor to work on it. I don't even know what to say. It's just cool, bro. It's one of the best gigs I've ever done.
Oh, I can't like, I can only imagine how great it was for you to be in the booth recording all those lines and getting to play that character from your childhood. And the closest comparison I can make to it is us as the fans finally having this game remade after so long and wanting it so bad, and it being done modern day, like, and then finally having it and playing it. Like, that's the only comparison I could possibly make to it.
Yeah, and it being done the right way. They took their time. I don't know if you remember, and most people don't. They're like, well, we need to delay it. We need to hold off on releasing it. And people are like, oh, we wait this long. It's like, trust me, sometimes you need to just be patient. And I was so thankful that, you know, most people were very, very patient with us. And when it got done, like I said, it got done the right way. And I think people were all the more happier with the finished product.
So, and that you know, you saying that, it makes me think. So obviously we got the trailer and the announcement, the very small teaser at E3 2015 is when we got that trailer. Did you know then you were voicing Barret, or did that come, you know, down the road? I'm not sure where the voice casting happens.
I didn't know because I found out as we were recording that the trailer had been done that long ago. I'm like, what? If I'd have known that, I'd have been like, hey man, cast me in this. You know,
calling your agent up.
Did you know that they were about to do Final Fantasy and I grew up on? You know, I'd have been that guy. But nice. I did not know that was happening, and so I mean, to me, it was kind of like firsts for me as well. It's not just first for the fans; it was a lot of firsts for me in this situation as well.
Yeah, and I, you know, at least from me and for the fans that we speak of, I can't say thank you enough to you, John, because one, you know, Remake alone. We've talked about this in a prior episode, but Final Fantasy VII Remake changed the course of Feyer and I's life, and it got him.
It sounds weird. I know it sounds
weird, but hear me out.
How so?
Feyer got into streaming and doing Twitch streaming and video game streaming, and that was something he'd always kind of wanted to do. But then Remake, we finally got trailers. We finally had a release date, and Feyer was like, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm going to make the jump. I'm going to stream. Cool. Remake is going to be my big thing. That's going to be the thing that pushes me. And then, you know, I spent a lot of time trying to, you know, bouncing ideas off with him, and I was getting hyped for it. And I had been on social media and Twitter before, but not really so much. But when the game came out, I started to make an active presence and get into the Final Fantasy community in a way that what I hadn't previously. I had gotten into podcasts in the year or two leading up to Remake, and really wanted to make my own. And I was like, I love Final Fantasy. I want to do a Final Fantasy podcast. And then lo and behold, you know, I don't want to call it a joke, but I made this comment on a tweet, and I think it may have even been with Crashing Game Night when I saw they were interviewing you, because I think that was my first exposure to hearing you as an individual, not as Barret.
That's funny. Shout out to Matt and them.
Yeah, Crashing Game Night are great guys, and Matt is wonderful. He gave me a lot of guidance on the early days.
Guys. Oh yeah, they're the bomb, dude.
Helpful. And
helpful,
very
dude.
Helpful,
very loving,
and
dude.
I had made a comment, you know, joking about how I finally got on the demo and my kiddo was watching me play, and Barret is so animated and such a big personality, and he's got big presence and he's loud, and that was something that my kid was drawn to, and he was running around the house doing the pointing and going, I know you can, to everybody. And, you know, I had made a comment about that, and you reached out, and, you know, it could have been something simple that you liked it or just commented, but you reached out and you wanted to see this video. You wanted to see how it was affecting, you know, my family in such a positive way. And I sent it, and that kind of kickstarted this. You sent a video back, and then we started a dialogue, and you became from Barret to John Bentley to a friend that I, you know, checked on and said, how's your family doing, type of thing. And
we kept in contact.
And then, you know, we talked about the podcast and it finally kicking up, and, you know, kind of getting when we might be able to do an episode, and all of these things, Feyer starting Twitch, starting streaming, me slowly getting my way to a podcast up, and then my interactions with you made the experience with the game that much deeper and more meaningful, because it wasn't just, oh, here's Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is a remake of my favorite game ever, and one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced as far as media goes. And then I was like, oh, now I know one of the people behind the game, and he's this wonderful, amazing, kind person that takes all this time to interact with people on Twitter and do comments and jumps in podcasts and does interviews, so much just to let people hang out with him. And it was great. It just made the experience that much more meaningful and amazing.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I mean, if we are just doing this stuff for ourselves, then it ain't right. You know what I mean? I'm a fanboy too, and I'm an only child. So I'm big on, look, if the platform to do a game, to have the privilege and the honor, first of all, to work, second of all, to do a game that you adore and, it shaped the course of your life, or to have anything to do with it, you know what I mean? Whether it be from a podcasting side or from an acting side or from a technical side or an artist side, whatever it may be, to be a part of that is a huge blessing. But how incredible to now have the opportunity to speak to people who, what you just did, what you just explained, who are not just moved by the game, but it's done something in their lives that has helped them in some shape, form, or fashion. Be it unto me to not have the time to spend with folks who are happy, who it's done something for. Because that's what it's all about to me. It's about the community. It's about being able to talk, especially during the time in which the game came out, when everybody's dealing with COVID, folks are going through depression. I mean, I can't tell you how many people we get to speak to that we get to stop from having suicidal thoughts, or we get to talk them off a ledge. To me, that's what it's all about, man.
I completely agree, dude. Like, that was a big reason I even myself got into content creation and wanting to be an entertainer. Like, if my content ever leads to, financial revenue, that's great. But like, the main reason I started it was for, those same reasons: reaching out to people, touching people's lives, being an entertainer, having that positive force of good out there when so many people can, they need it and they could use it and all that sort of thing. And that right there, the remake inspired me to do that because I was so passionate about the game. Because I was, after it got announced in 2015 and then it was radio silence for like 3 years, I was that crazy person going crazy, crawling through the internet looking for these little breadcrumbs and these little weird secrets, like, oh, maybe they changed the coding on their website and there's information in there to be nibbled on. And like, becoming the content creator helped me channel all that energy that I was using on being a crazy person into something, like a force for good. It's crazy how my life's changed because of this game and the performances within it.
That's wonderful to hear. I mean, I figure we got so much negative stuff going on in the world right now, and so much negative stuff going on in our country alone. It's like, if we can just, this is my whole concept: love God, love people. If we can just do that, if we can get back to the roots of caring about one another as opposed to what we want, trumping everything, and I hate using that word, trumping everything that we think we need. If we can just get over ourselves and start caring about other people, it would change the course of American society. If it wasn't about me, I, my, but about we, our, us. Not us versus them. Just like, how can we? What should we all? If we can just change the flow of things, I think we can start getting back to, not a utopia, because nothing's perfect, but we can at least get back to communication, which I think is key in any kind of relationship.
Oh, 100%.
So yeah, if I can be a part of something like that, then thank God that He's given me the ability to do so, and I'll take that any day.
Amen to that. And one of the things that I want to circle back around to, and that I had been thinking about, is as a society, as a country, we have slowly gotten better about representation as far as main characters and media goes for not just Black individuals, but across the board. We're slowly getting there. We still have a lot of room to make up, but we are getting better. I love the fact that Elias one of his favorite characters is Miles Morales. That's when he thinks Spider-Man, he thinks Miles Morales, and that's because of Into the Spider-Verse.
I just started playing the doggone game.
And I played that game when I got the PS5, and Elias played and watched that. And that is who he thinks of when he thinks of Spider-Man. It's actually weird for him when he sees a Spider-Man and it's Peter Parker. And it's a white guy or a white kid.
Hilarious.
And for a lot of people, whether it be Miles Morales, because that is a very popular video game, or Final Fantasy VII Remake, Barret in Final Fantasy VII Remake may be a lot of people's first exposure to a black character, seeing that in a video game. Very similar to 97. It's going to be the same way now. Barret and Miles Morales were one of the first black video games characters my kid ever saw. And I'm so thrilled that he gets to have an experience with characters that are so multifaceted, nuanced, deep, and positive role models.
That makes me happy. That makes me happy. I mean, Barret has agendas that, I would hope most kids wouldn't be like, you know what, I'm going to go out and blow up a reactor.
I'm going to do eco-terrorism.
Yeah, no terrorism, please.
Right. But, to hear that everyone can actually play a character with a diverse background or a diverse culture, and that character doesn't just die, or that character isn't a stereotype or a caricature, how so many different ethnicities and people of color have been portrayed in the past in a negative way. That's a beautiful thing. And it says a lot for this next generation, the generations to come, that, they get to have that experience. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Future generations, they are the future. So, giving them that diversity and getting better and better about it and letting them have these experiences, I hope will, instill kindness and acceptance and positivity, and not further create division. We can only hope.
Yeah. And
guide and teach.
Yeah, exactly. Hope, pray, guide, and teach. That's the only way that's going to happen. And it's going to take, parents to do it. It's going to take relatives to do it. It's going to take grandparents to do it. It's going to take folks to actually come around and say, hey, I'm going to make a conscious effort to make sure that they don't grow up hating.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's just too much of that going on right now. There's so much hatred in the world. And half the time people are doing it either out of fear or because they think they're supposed to, because that's all they've been taught or that's all they know. So once again, hopefully our society comes around and says, hey, you know what? Buck stops here. This generation is not going to have that.
And as a father of 5 kids with all sorts of age range, my kids are ages all over the place, and hearing the way they talk, and my oldest, she's almost 15, and she's starting to become aware of a lot of different things in that sense, and the way their friends talk, and it's all it gives me hope and positivity looking at the next generation, knowing that they're going to be better than us.
That's a good thing, isn't it? And that's the thing. That's another thing. For me, even raising my kids, it's I remember them saying, hey, Dad, you did this, and hey, Dad, you did this, and I said, honey, Daddy wants you to be better than him. I want you to have things that are better. I mean, what parent doesn't? But I want you to be put in a position where you're better. I don't want to compete with you. I want things to be better for you guys. That's my whole goal. My whole goal is that you're not going to be haunted as young men, hunted as adults. My goal is to raise you so that you can learn to love, and so that you can learn to provide, and you can learn to care for, and you can learn to nurture, uplift, and edify other people around you, speak life into people as opposed to fear or anything else. That's my job. I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be better than me, because my parents raised me that way. And I think my parents were pretty doggone incredible, because they did things and put up with things that I could never imagine. My dad grew up in Alabama, and he was chased by the Klan every other week. My mom grew up in Nashville, and she was an educator, but she also had to fight rheumatoid arthritis as a young child and so many different things. And they wanted things to be better for me. So I'm like, well, they set a precedence that was pretty doggone incredible. How am I supposed to raise mine better than that? Well, I've been handed the gauntlet. So shame on me if I don't, reach out and try to do that. So that's been my whole thing. We should want our people, our next generation, we should want them to be better than us. Not like us, better than us.
Well said.
Completely agree. And I will say, your passion and the way you feel about this, and you can tell that Barret as a character, I could feel your passion as you voiced Barret because you delivered all those heavy lines and everything so powerfully. And it was just, you could feel it all. I really don't know how to put it into words.
Hey, listen, that's great news to hear, because as an actor, you prepare for specific things to happen, and to hear the feedback, which you very seldom get to hear. You know you've done your job, or you know you've done what you set out to do when you hear people's comments and their feedback and what they felt. And, because I learned at a very, very, very young age, which is why I started doing acting. Man, I remember when I was a kid, I'll give you I say this a lot because people always say, well, how did you get into acting? Well, when I was a little guy, and my mom taught me how to read at a very, very, very young age. I think I was done with the Odyssey, or all the Greek and Roman mythology. I was pretty much done with at the age of probably 8 or 9. I think I finished the Iliad at 8 or 9. I was fascinated because my mom was an educator, and my aunts and my uncles, they were all educators. So they taught me how to read and learn at a very young age. And I've just devoured books and comic books and anything like that. So because of that, at 5 years old, when I graduated kindergarten, they had this thing where they wanted us to get up and do a performance. And our performance was to just do excerpts or whatever, and just little acting and singing and different things. Well, they asked me to do the Martin Luther King speech, the I Have a Dream speech. And I'm like, what? My mom's like, yeah, he'll do it. He knows how to memorize lines. And I'm like, what? She's like, memorize these lines and you'll get up and you'll say them at your graduation ceremony. Like, what are you talking about? What does memorization mean? I'm 5 years old, right? And so we did it, and I got to see how people reacted. And I think that's where I got the whole bug, when I saw, man, people liked that. People liked when I spoke. And it wasn't about me, but it was about what I was speaking about. Well, I knew that the school that I went to at the time was a place where the riots there was a center of where the riots were in Chicago when Martin Luther King was assassinated. So the grandparents, the parents, the aunts and the uncles, they were all crying and clapping and cheering and standing up. Well, I didn't know that was why at the time. I just knew that, man, people are reacting to this. It's pretty good. I should do this. And that's when I went, oh, this is pretty good. So if I can do something or just talk and make people's emotions happy, or relate to it, or give them a slice of life that's a good thing, then, man, I got to do that. So that's where I kind of got the bug from it all.
I don't think I heard that story before, and I'm sure you've told it before in interviews and podcasts and such. But when I played Remake, there were a couple points in the game where I cried. One was during the Honeybee Inn dance sequence where Cloud cross-dresses, and that whole scene was done very, very well and so positive that it moved me, and I cried.
They did it so tasteful, didn't they?
They did. And then the second part was when, after Platefall, and Barret is talking with Cloud, and he's not sure if Marlene's okay, and he is basically begging Cloud to lie to him and just say, like, just tell me she's okay. Like, I don't care if it's a lie, just tell it to me. Like, I need to hear it. And as a father, that line, that whole sequence, and the way Barret was grappling with his grief in that moment really affected me. And I find it, listening to, because it's not just, it's your experiences and your passion and the life that you led to be able to manifest pain and grief and all of these things, to deliver that into any character you voice, but in this case, Barret. But listening to these stories, it's not just your experience, it's your parents' experiences, because those experiences your parents went through shaped you. And it's this web branching out of the things that affected them, the things that affected the people in that crowd when you gave that speech that they went through with the riots, and all of these things kind of like altered the trajectory of your life and shaped you. And then you get to do this experience, and it's affects me or anybody playing that game. It's very layered, and it's beautiful.
Ain't life cool? Isn't life
crazy.
Cool when you live it and you realize that you don't have to take yourself out before it's time, and you want to live day to day. You want to go through the hard times because they make you tougher, they make you stronger. But not only that, they sharpen you and help you to help someone else not do what you were thinking about doing. But not only that, you're able to relate to them better because you were there. That's why people are needed. That's why people need to stay alive. That's why people need to continue to fight through the tough times. That's why people need to not give up, because your experience may be the very thing that someone else needs to survive. And that's just beautiful. It's a cyclical thing, and it's beautiful.
It is. It's very beautiful. And thank you, John, for sharing all of these experiences with us, because I do hope, whoever listens to this podcast, that this message of positivity really, really helps anybody if they need it, or just, even if it's just a smile on their face. I really hope that they get that from this. But we've been talking a lot of heavy and very positive, wonderful, beautiful things. But let's move on to talking about the actual Final Fantasy VII Remake. We have questions that our listeners submitted, and even a couple of messages from them that they wanted to give you, that we opened up the doors for, and want to ask you those questions and pass along those messages.
Oh, for sure. That's cool. People got messages. That's cool. I want to hear the messages.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool, man.
Lots of love.
Lord knows we need it.
We got a lot of love for you.
So the first one is from Caladria, and she wanted to lead with
beautiful name.
One, that you are amazing in all caps, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Caladria.
Her question for you is, what was your favorite part of the remake as Barret?
There were so many parts that were fun. I mean, I still love the fact that I got to do the fanfare. That's like really special. And then also that the stairs were just fun.
The stairs were so great. The banter.
They were a hoot, man. I mean, you got to understand, those were just fun to do because we got to have fun, and Cody is just great with it. He did so many fun things with his voice that it was just like, oh my gosh, I know he's going to take that choice. Okay, then I have to do this. Okay, so it was just fun. But the stairs, they were really fun. The emotional scenes were great too. They were heavy, but they were fun to do because that's what I was going for with trying to establish Barret as a character, not a caricature, and to show so many different levels that he has. I remember, and I know I'm kind of going around the question, but I remember specifically when it was coming out, there were so many negative things that people were saying about Barret and what was going to happen. And this was them based off of seeing, I think, gameplay. And they're like, oh my gosh, he sounds like this and he's not black and there's all these different things. I'm like, yo, man, just give it a chance. You haven't even seen it yet. Give it a chance. And the reason I was saying that was because the reason I say that now is because people were seeing the first things that we did, which is the elevator scene. That's a big, if you look at Barret, he's moving a lot. He's on an elevator and he's like gesticulating. He's like moving. His arms are up. He's talking. He's emoting.
He's very animated. It's almost like performative. Animated.
Right. But I didn't want him to be a caricature. So I have to now take the movement that's already been done physically by the mocap actor, and I have to take the words that are given to me from the translation and put them in a body that's already trying to be huge and big, and he doesn't need to because he's huge and big, and try to ground it. Well, of course he's going to be loud. Of course he's going to be boisterous. That's his character. But it's like, give it a chance. He's got levels. He's so many different things. He's a father. He's a leader. He's a great friend. I mean, his relationship with Tifa, which, if you know the story of Barret, you got to understand why Marlene is his daughter. So many different levels to this guy. And I'm like, well, you just saw a snippet. Slow down. Just wait for it.
And one of the great things was that, in the original, it's hard to tell, like, oh, is this character whispering? What, they do some exclamation points and stuff to give you a certain level of energy. But through the course of Remake, we got to see so much diversity with Barret. We got to see him be that loving, caring father, and not just in, motions of a character in video game and via text, but your voice changed. You had these very soft moments, these very tender moments. You did have loud, boisterous moments because Barret is a charismatic leader of an eco-terrorist group. He's going to be loud and boisterous and animated, but he did have these moments of doubt, fear, grief, and we got to see all of that from you. And I again don't want to discredit any of the voice performances anybody did because they were all great, but Barret was just done. Your performance as Barret was top of the line for Remake for me.
Man, I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah, so that was the goal in doing it, and so I had a lot of fun. Lady C, I had a lot of fun doing it. And
she's gonna love that.
Yeah, she may cry.
There are a lot of different things that led up to why. But there are a lot of different scenes that were just fun to do. So I don't have like one particular one because just doing the job was great. They were fun. It was just a fun job. I love my scenes, especially with Red. Those were just awesome.
Yes. I can't wait for more of that because we only got a little of that towards the end. It's going to get so much better. And the one thing I got to say too, before we move on, and I know Feyer is going to 100% agree with me on this, but having played OG and remembering the banter and stuff that you get when you choose to go up the stairs instead of the elevator, when you finally get to that point in Remake, having experienced 16 chapters of the voice acting and the banter and combat and stuff like that, when I got to the stairs and I was just like, the banter when I climb these stairs is gonna be amazing. And then when you finally do it and it delivered, it was just amazing. Like, I will always take the stairs.
Yeah, it's because it's all, I mean, the writers are absolutely incredible. Square Enix is just the stuff they do for all the Final Fantasies, period. Even the stuff they do for, what's the one with the Disney one that I can't remember the name of? Kingdom Hearts. I mean, the writing is pretty doggone incredible and so crafty, but it's all to set up something else. They tell a story, and the best things to watch to be entertained by are stories that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And here we have this unbelievable video game with unbelievable sound that's telling a story from beginning, middle to end, and you're having fun playing it as different characters. That's pretty doggone ingenious when it comes to video games to me.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed. So this next question comes from Agrius, and he has two questions.
Agrius, he sounds like a gamer.
He is. His name is from a Final Fantasy game. Firstly, he said, "Thank you for lending your voice towards bringing an old friend to life."
That's funny. How's he your friend? You hung out with Barret? You know a real Barret? Oh, my goodness. Agrius is hanging out with eco-terrorists. You better look out.
Yep, we'll keep an eye on him.
Call Agrius right now. Make sure he's okay.
So his first question, he said, what do you do to get into the mindset to deliver the emotionally heavy lines in the game? Anger, despair, etc. I personally cannot act angry unless I'm genuinely angry about something. So that's always been something that impressed me with voice acting and acting in general.
Oh, well, one, I went to school for it. So
done.
It's basically, it's not, I don't think that people always have to, and we call that particular kind of acting. You can either have method acting, which is what that derives from. Well, I got to be angry to play angry, or sense memory. And I think sense memory is a safer thing to do. But sense memory can be tricky because if you don't know yourself, or you haven't, revisited or visited things that could harm you mentally in the past, or things that, you went through in the past that totally affect you and your performance, your mood or your attitude or your words, then you have to be cautious with that too. But, acting school helps with all that, as an actor, you got to be prepared. If you really, really, really want to know or really want to pursue acting, I suggest a book by Uta Hagen, An Actor Prepares, or Stanislavski. There's several books on acting. There's different methods that can get you there, and there's different techniques that you can use. But I don't suggest being straight up angry all the time. Some people do. Like I said, that's a choice, though. I just don't choose to do it that way.
That's great advice and great background for that. His second question says, were you allowed to implement facets of your own personality into Barret, and did you?
Oh, yeah. It's like I said, Barret is a lot like two of my uncles. I mean, you got to know my uncles to know Barret. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that I chose to do the lines, and there are a lot of different tones that I wanted to bring to the canvas, so to speak. And there are a lot of ways that I wanted him to be portrayed and to paint. So yeah, I was able to bring my essence to a character that I thought was pretty iconic when I was younger and playing the game. So yeah, of course, I don't think there are many people who don't bring something of themselves to a character, doesn't bring a little bit of their essence to whatever they do as an actor or performer.
So kind of piggybacking off of that question, because this is kind of similar, this next question comes from Nader5. And he said, how did they choose to characterize Barret, and how much input for improvisation did you have? How much
didn't
leeway?
Have a lot of improvisation because me personally, I like to honor the writers. They wrote that script, and they get paid to write that script, and they're very creative, and I want to honor their work, just like I would want someone to honor my work. So I'm very heavy on trying to be word perfect the best I can with memorization and everything else. Although, you're reading when you do voiceover, so it's not really memorization. But I wanted to not just justify the character, I wanted to honor writers and what they created. So there wasn't that much improv there. What was the half of that question?
It was just saying, how did they choose to characterize Barret? Did you have any input over that?
Barret is Barret. I mean, how they wrote him is, I think, how we portrayed him, how we played him. I just took different nuances and kind of added to what they already did. I always look at a script as this is, their words. That's the Bible. That's what they wrote. That's not a guideline. That's what they want. So if there were any times when I was like, well, what do you think about this? I would give my 2 cents. But for the most part, I really didn't have to change anything or alter anything, because it's pretty solid. What they wrote was pretty solid.
For things like the fanfare that you talked about having such a great time for, did they come to you going, we want Barret to sing a fanfare, or was that something you kind of came up with, or you were like, this would be fun, that got added?
No, they asked. I was like, hey, we want to give Barret the fanfare. I'm like, what? So I didn't expect to be able to. The fanfare is pretty awesome, dude.
Oh yeah, iconic.
Like, yeah, I'm like, my character? Okay, sure, of course. So yeah, it was an honor.
So these next 2 questions come from a YouTube channel called Nonstop Final Fantasy. He wanted to ask, if you could voice any other character in any media, who would it be?
I don't know. I love Marvel stuff. I love superhero stuff because I grew up, reading a lot of comic books. So if I was able to do superhero stuff, I would do that in a heartbeat. I never even thought about it. That's a great question.
The dream role.
I'm usually, people ask me, what's your dream role? Where a role that's consistent, where I get to portray a character and take care of my family. That's
great.
Consistent work. Any character that brings consistent work. That's what I want to do. Because when you think about it, it's still a business. It's still about the work. So for me, sometimes you find some of your best work in characters that you might not even like, but you find out a little bit about yourselves when you do them. So for me, it's just about how can I provide for and take care of my family. And that's how I've always gone about work, because that's work. But there are perks to being able to say, hey, I played this character, it's awesome, but you still have to do the work. And so for me, I don't know if I have an iconic character. I would like to create one of my own.
That's great. That's good. A character that provides you healthy work-life balance,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh, this is fun. This is really cool to do.
So his second question was, what's the hardest part of being a voice actor?
To me, one of the hardest parts of being a voice actor is not always having a script ahead of time. Having to go in, knowing that you got the job, or knowing that you're going in to do the work, and not being able to look at the script ahead of time. Because I like to be very prepared, and I like to have different ways to do things. And so there are a lot of auditions, a lot of jobs that you go in for, and you don't You don't know how the character sounds. You don't know what the character looks like. Sometimes they don't have a reference, you know what I mean? Like a picture. And you have to go in and you have to do it. They're fun to create and everything, but I like to be prepared, and I like to be prepared for anything and everything. And a lot of that preparation, to me, I don't need to always see how a character looks. It helps tremendously. But for me, I need to know what the words are. The words allow me to kind of figure out how the writer wants this character depicted, or what choices I would make to have this character to speak. What this character sounds like 9 times out of 10 is what comes out of his mouth.
So did you have that with Remake? Did you get the script ahead of time, or did you get like the part that you were going to work on that day when you went into the booth ahead of time? Like, how did that work?
Part that I was going to work on that day usually, but Remake was different. Remake was different simply because I played the game when I was younger. So I'm like, oh, I remember this scene. Oh, here we go. Oh, they changed this up a little bit. Oh, this is great. You know what I mean? So Remake was a whole different beast. Remake was like, sense. Oh, we get to create. Oh, we could do this on the fly. Oh, this is where the writers are going to take the story. I thought that, you know what I mean? So that was different. I'm talking about jobs where they say, hey, we're going to go in, you're going to play this character. You've auditioned for it. I'm like, what? I auditioned for that a month ago. I don't know what I sounded like. Can you please play me back the audition? And usually I'll figure it out from the audition, but then you go in, they'll tell you the name of the project that you're going in for, and you go like, wait a minute, this is Red Dead Redemption. Oh my gosh. No, I mean, it's something different now. Oh, they named it. Okay, that's what I'm playing. I didn't, you know what I mean? So I got to get over the excitement of, oh, that was what this was for, because the role, when you told me the name was this, and I'm not, talking about Red Dead Redemption in particular, but you never know. The project half the time it's under a different name so that people don't leak information, because we live in this crazy society where people either accidentally or purposely talk about something that they're not supposed to talk about because you're under an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So I'm very cautious about, talking about projects, but it does help when you kind of know what you're going in for.
I could see that. Not that I'm a voice actor, but I would much prefer knowing what I'm getting into ahead of time.
Yeah, then I can give you like nuances and give you what you want, and not have to guess, and make your job as a director and as a writer easier. But it's okay, because like I said, the beauty is you still get to create, and that's where the acting part comes in that we were talking about earlier. If you're an actor, then you can do the work. Most actors who aren't prepared are the ones who aren't well read, who don't know what's happening within the environment, who aren't culturally aware of what's happening with the character that they're portraying, who don't know the temperature of the room when they go in, who haven't done their research, who, be prepared. If you want to work long as an actor, which to me is the overall goal, because like I said before, it's a job. If you want to do that, then be prepared. Don't go in, fan-struck or awestruck. Go in and show them that you're a professional, get the job done, and show them, hey, this is why you hired me, and this is why you should hire me again. Because it's never just about that one job. It's about continuing to work consistently.
That's great advice about being prepared for anything, honestly.
Yeah. Be on time, be early, be prepared.
If you're on time, you're late.
Basically. I like getting, whether I have the job or not, I like getting there anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes early, so I can know what's ahead of me.
Oh, I'm the same way, and I can thank the U.S. military for that mindset. I was early to everything.
There you go. And, it just shows that you're ready. You're ready to work, and if something comes up, then you're able to handle it because you're there early. You're there early to handle it.
These next two questions come from Onion Knight. And he says, the first question, in the lift scene in chapter 1, Barret goes all in with the Shinra abusing the use of Mako. How fun is a scene like that to do as a voice actor, especially as it's one of the first real moments where we get a glimpse of Barret as a character?
Is this, he says, the lift, meaning the elevator?
Yep.
It was really cool because that was one of the first things we shot. And I'm like, oh, this is the beginning when I was like, I remembered the music and everything from when I was playing it as a young man. but it was fun because, like I said, it was when we first started. I'm going, wait a minute. I have to sound like he's moving because I'm big on how do we match the words to the movement, and acting for me, a lot of times when I would do acting on stage, my memorization of lines came after we blocked it. Blocking meaning after we got on stage or we moved. We actually physically got up and said, this is where you go when this happens. This is where you go when this happens. That's what blocking is, your direction, where you're going. So having it already been done by the mocap actors, I was like, okay, let's dissect this. Since this is the beginning and I've got to establish this character, he's got to be consistent all the way through, because I think that was one of the trailers that was coming out. So we had to get that done first. And so that was very fun to create. But it was challenging. It was very challenging because it's like, that's not me moving, but it was challenging, but it was fun.
Yeah, I could imagine that with the movement, that exchange between Barret and Cloud early on was just so
Classic.
great. It was classic, and it set the stage for those characters and how they were going to butt heads for most of the game.
Oh, big time. He's like, you hear that? You really hear that?
Get help. And like
Damn right
that line,
get help.
that get help line was just immediate belly laughter. It was so good.
It's like, oh my gosh. And say that again. It's just like so many little things like that establish the characters. There's even the looks. Like, I think Jessie shrugs her shoulders.
Yeah.
Like, that's just him, monologuing. That's just what he does. And it's like, Cloud's basically like, I don't have to listen to this crap. You hired me for this job. I'm going to do this job and I'm out. So it was just fun to see some of that come into fruition too, having played it. So it was just really cool to be able to do those lines. And then, while you eat, it's just fun to do that.
That's so great. Getting to hear the little snippets of Barret in there is so much fun.
Right?
So the second question he had is, how fun is Barret to voice act in general, as his story arc in part 1 is full of real highs and lows, and his personality is just so big and out there?
It's a blast, honestly. Like I said, this is one of the best and funnest, if that's a word, jobs that I've done for several reasons. One, because it's iconic to me, having played it, back in the day. Two, because it's a great game. And then, it's a minority. I've said this before. It's a brother who is in a game who isn't the first one to die. It's like, there's so many different reasons why this is fun. It's just fun. And I've got unbelievable directors. I've got unbelievable translators. I've got unbelievable writers. I've got unbelievable mocap actors who have done this in the past. On the Japanese side, we've got unbelievable actors who have portrayed this role, and done their thing. It's fun. It's one of the best jobs that I've ever done. As far as voiceover, as far as animation. The people are cool. The folks I get to work with, the team is outstanding. It's a quality project. I mean, I can go on and on and on. It's a blast. It's honestly a blast.
That's so great.
No pun intended, because we
because you blast
a lot of reactors in there.
So this next question comes from Maddie Middle, and they asked,
Eminem.
Yeah.
very simple question. What is your favorite summon?
Ooh. Okay, so there's this, I don't even know the name of it now. Alex told me the name. I can't even pronounce it. Alex from Con, he's just smooth with it. Alex Main. The summon with the dragon thingish.
Bahamut?
Yes, Bahamut.
Yes.
I never can say the name right. That's one of the coolest summons, dude. That's one of the coolest summits in the world.
That's our
Dragons are my favorite.
Yep.
Seriously.
Oh yeah. We're right there with you.
How do you say it so I can say it right?
Bahamut.
Bahamut. If I could say Bahamut, if I could use Bahamut, instead of shooting the cannon sometimes, I'm like, give me that. Give me that, because Bahamut is just smooth and cool.
Just for you, John, when I play Remake next way through, I'm going to make sure Bahamut is equipped on you and that you use it all the time. I'll send you a video.
You have to send me the video. That is like one of the coolest summons in the world to me.
Agreed.
All right. So this next question comes from Papa Sprague, and he says...
all these great names, all these unbelievably cool handles.
He says, what is your favorite game and why?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So, that's so hard. My son, okay. All my sons play video games, all of them, because I was an only child. So I still have my stuff. I went back and had to get my Atari. So I've got got Atari here. We've got Super NES. We've got we've got Nintendo. We've got Sega Dreamcast. We've got Game Boys, all the different ones that were out, except for the very first one. And I got a bunches of PlayStations and Xboxes and all kind of stuff here, but I'm always in the middle of playing a game. I'm always starting something when I should finish something else first. So it's hard to say. I really fell in love recently with Ghosts of
Tsushima?
Tsushima.
Oh, yeah.
Fell in love with that game, was upset that was it. I'm like, what do you mean I'm over?
Yeah.
But the same way I felt about what's the one where you're the ranger? They had a part 1 and part 2.
You're a ranger.
It's from Lord of the Rings. From Lord of the Rings.
The Shadows of Mordor.
Shadows of Mordor. And then there's another one. There's 2 of those. Fell in love with that. But then I got into Yakuza, and I'm like, oh, this is a really cool game. Now, the old ones, the first ones, because I was like, I'm going back. I'm not going to play the new ones yet. The first ones are like, they're slower. They're much slower. It's almost like playing Final Fantasy VII again. You got to read what's going on, but the world is so vast and so big. But then again, I love Spider-Man, the Miles Morales. Oh my gosh, that's like the bomb. And then somebody, Darren, doggone, he's like my nephew. He got me a Persona 5, and that is one of the most interesting games I've ever played. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I figured it out. I'm in this castle. He's like, man, you're not even a third of the way through. Like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, I didn't know it was that long a gameplay.
Yeah, that one's pretty insane.
But it's so good. But when I go back, there are games that I love called Vanguard. Oh. There's games that I love, Adventure. I'm still like, when Ready Player One came out, I'm like, oh, this is great. They found the hidden key. Oh my gosh, there's a castle. I'm just pumped up over crazy stuff. But I'll tell you a story. I don't know if I've shared this story ever, but I had a game called Bass and Black Bass, and I think it was for the Super Nintendo. And the controller rattled, but I got the actual fishing rod controller at the time, so it was super vibration, all that. And I was playing it, and this is when my wife and I, we had just gotten married, and I'm playing the game, and she came home from work. I was playing NBA Live with my buddy Melvin. And she's like, oh, hey, Melvin, how you doing? I'm like, hey, baby, how you doing? She's like, okay, what'd you do today? I'm like, I got up in the morning. I just, went to an audition. I lied. I didn't have an audition that day. But I was playing video games with Melvin, right? So Melvin leaves, and Michelle's like, okay, I'm going to go eat dinner. And then I'm like, all right, cooked your dinner. It's already good. You're good. And she comes back out, and I'm still playing the game. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm playing the game. She's like, well, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. I'm like, well, don't go to bed yet. I'll be there in a second. We'll sit down and talk. And I'm playing now Bass and Black Bass by myself. Bass and Black Bass is one of the coolest games in the world. I like fishing. My dad brought me up fishing. That was the closest thing to fishing I could do at the time, even though I was in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, and didn't get my butt up and go fishing that particular day. So anyway, I'm playing a game, and it's just, it's fun. You keep your records, you see how big they are, they show you the graphic, and then Michelle comes out, and I'm like, hey, baby, you decided to come out here? She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you came out here to watch me play? How, she's like, I'm going to work. I said, what? She said, I'm going to work. It's the next day. What are you doing? I said, oh. I said, how big you think this one is? And she was so upset. Oh, we tell that story all the time. But man, that was like the craziest game. But I love that game. That and Sammy Sosa, I think it was Sammy Sosa softball. those are some funny games. They were fun to play, and that's, I grew up playing Atari, but, playing those games were just the bomb.
Oh, man, that Bass story is so good. I'm going to remember that.
When you guys meet Michelle, she won't laugh at that story, but she will say, yeah, he was crazy. And then she'll laugh.
She won't laugh at that story.
Because she was not happy. She was like, what are you doing? Oh.
That's so much fun, though. We've all had those moments.
That's when I knew, man, I better slow down on the video games.
All right. So these last two questions come from Scott B. And he is located in the UK, which will be pertinent to the second question. But his first question is, and we kind of touched on this a little bit throughout our talking, but he did ask, how did the community opinions / preconceptions of Barret affect your development of the character? Did you try to block this out, or were there positives that came from engaging with fans?
Oh, by the time I started getting knee deep into the work doing Barret, I mean, that's probably when I started looking at or paying attention to what people were saying. The one thing, as you know, just trying to get onto Discord and do everything, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. You're gonna have to guide me through this. Everybody still laughs at me because I still have a hard time like getting on Discord, doing Zoom, trying to figure things out. I'm not like electronically challenged, but there's so many different venues that you can go through and do interviews and all this. That's how I was with doing the character. I'm like, it's about the work. Let me stay focused and do this work. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't pay attention to what people were posting on Instagram until my son said, hey, is this the character you're doing? This is what people are saying. And then I think on Twitter, I didn't even know how to use Twitter. I thought when people were like, hey, tweet me, I was like, what the hell does that mean? Tweet me. Is that a new thing that young people are saying? And it's not like I'm that old, but it's just like, I didn't know what people were talking about as far as me, do this, do that. I was like, what are you talking about? Call me. Text me or call me or email me, It was like, and so when all that stuff came out, by the time I even looked at people's opinions, because that's what I thought they were, I was like, oh, that's messed up. But it didn't have anything to do with how I shaped Barret or what I chose to do for Barret. I can care less what people say. I mean, I always have said opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one and they all stink, unless you're saying something positive, unless you're trying to be positive. So it's like, I try to avoid all kind of negativity as much as possible. I don't want to entertain people who seem to, I've watched society change to, hey man, somebody's doing something great and it's positive and everybody can love it and get along with it, to, hey, let's do something for shock value, whether it hurts someone or not. And then that gets more of a look and entertaining and it's more popular. I watched that change in society and it sickens me that someone doing something for attention or for self or for shock value is more important than someone doing good in the world. And the news will report more shock value. And so people say, well, I'll get attention if I do this. It's kind of like, I'm not that dude. So I don't even entertain when people do something negative unless I have to intervene and say, hey, man, stop. Don't do that. Or, hey, that's inaccurate. Or you misquoted me. You know what I mean? So, and it's usually not until someone points it out to me. So that's just me. And I didn't really let it affect me at all. That when I did see it, I'm like, man, how could they I was shocked more so. My son was like, Dad, don't be naive. That's just people talking. I'm like, I'm not naive. I was like, I don't understand why they would say that, but okay, let them say whatever they want to say. When the project is finished, then let's revisit that. I didn't follow. It's kind of like people reading their own press. I was an athlete, so I was never swayed by the man across from me on the football field talking smack. It takes a lot to make me react to that. I was never impressed by what the reporter said, whether it be positive or negative, in the paper about me. You know what I mean? So it was neither here nor there.
I think that's a very wise way to go about handling opinions.
Oh, yeah.
In general. And
good words.
I will say that. Yeah, agreed. I will say that, while hearing the feedback in the community when we started to get the actual trailers with voices and Remake come out, there were a lot of people, and we touched on this earlier, where there were people just upset purists who were like, oh, they're changing the voice cast. I don't want this. I want the voice cast that I had in my head from, watching these things over and over and over. And we kind of addressed that. But since the game came out, I have not heard a single negative thing, at least on my end, about the way Barret's been done. And everyone's been positive. And I think the only outrage I've heard is outrage of you not being nominated for more awards or awards period. So
yeah, I mean, I'll let that be what it is too. Is I think it's awesome that people think that, and I think it's great. But once again, accolades are cool if it's a tool to allow you to speak into someone's life or positive. So, you got to be prepared for everything. And I think it's awesome. The awards are great. As long as people know the work's done and it can continue to generate work, then I'm good with that. I've always been that actor who has never been the superstar spotlight or, getting paid the big bucks and all that other stuff. And I've always been what I consider, or what people have told me, the glue actor, the one that comes alongside the actor that's getting all the accolades to help that performance pop or to help that performance go. Especially, I've seen it on stage and in my life where you got these actors who are being cast because of how many likes they get or how many followers they have, or if they've got other projects that are going on, or they're known for singing or something else, and how many fans they have or whatever it is, and they're okay or they're good or they're solid, but my job is to come in and make them look better. I learned that a long time ago when I was playing an antagonist to a character in a show, and one of the guys in the show looked at me and said, "Hey man, what's wrong?" I'm like, man, this dude can't do this, he can't do this, and I'm trying to do this. And I had just gotten out of school and I had just gotten to California. And this veteran actor pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, bro, your job is to make that actor, who may not be able to do all those things, but you can, to make them look good. If you can do that, then you will have a long career in this business because they know that you are that guy. And if you can do that, one day you'll get your shot to be that guy. And you'll be prepared with knowing what not to do." And I'm like, okay. And it's true. It's happened in so many cases where, you come along and you're the assist man, you're the point guard. People don't realize it, but you're like controlling the whole deal. You're like helping that actor in that show. You're giving justice to what the writers have written and what the producers want. You're coming alongside to help that project and move that project along and be all the more better. And people go, "Who is that guy? I know who that is, but who is that guy? We want that guy." And that's what it is. And that's some of the best advice I've ever had in my life.
Well, however many years it's been of you, making other people look good, we finally got you to Barret and, leading, Barret. It's funny because Barret is a main character, but arguably Cloud is the main character for Final Fantasy VII. But in part one of Remake, and that whole Midgar section, Barret really is the primary character. He's the one driving the show, and it's not until later when they leave and the plot with Sephiroth and the fate of the planet comes in a little bit more. Is Cloud driving the show? But for a long time, it's Barret.
Oh yeah, well you got to remember it's Avalanche.
Yeah,
it's all about Avalanche, and I just so happen to be the leader of Avalanche, so you're going to get a lot of Barret like that.
It's great. So Scott's second question is, and this I'm really excited to ask this one. He said he's really enjoyed hearing you speaking about your desire to create a positive representation of your community in your roles. Who were the positive role models and characters that you looked up to as a child, and how do you feel being one of those role models for younger gamers? He is a teacher in the UK, and their Black History Month is in October, and he's going to be teaching pupils in October. And it would be great to hear some of your inspirations that he could maybe share with the students.
Well, first of all, I would love to be a part of sitting in on his class, and if he needed any help, where if they're still Zooming and stuff like that, if it worked out, I would love to be a part of coming into the classroom setting and speaking to the kids so that they have a tangible face and a tangible voice on screen, live, talking to them about what they're learning. So please, if there's any way to reach out to him and tell him that I would love to be a part of his classroom setting, I do it in a heartbeat. I grew up with educators. I've thought for a very long time that I was supposed to be a teacher because of my upbringing, and I still try to help out however I can because it's always about the next generations coming up. So I'd love to be a part of that. So please tell him that. And then I've had several role models. My parents, for one, my aunts and uncles. My aunts and uncles were, they sat in on the whole, they were part of SNCC. They were part of the civil rights movement. They sat in, they did the sit-ins on the Walgreens and the Woolworths, the 5 and dime stores where they were trained to sit down in a restaurant and when they were abused to not fight back. And as they were getting arrested, my mom had just so happened to be across the street because she had to use the bathroom. They came into the restaurant, the police came in and they beat the hell out of some of my aunts and uncles. And, my mom was like, what's going on? They're like, they're over there and they're taking them to jail. So I had a lot of folks who worked in civil rights movement around me. So I've had very positive role models that were accessible to me. There's several people that many of us don't even know about because we're not taught it. And here in the States, they're trying to even eliminate all of that. Dr. Ralph Bunche, first heart surgeon, African-American heart surgeon, the contribution he made was absolutely incredible to the medical society, to the medical field. Madam C.J. Walker, they've done a story recently since of her story about hair care products. There's so many people who are, to me, just standouts with what they've created and the environments that they've created. Denzel Washington, my son just talked to me the other night. He was like, hey, Dad, have you ever met Denzel? And I'm like, yes, I actually have. And I told him the whole story, and that's a long story to go into. But he said after we talked, he said, if there was no Denzel, then there wouldn't be a Barret. And it's true because at the time, right, probably about a year, maybe less than a year, I was about to be done with the business. I was tired of it. I was like, why am I going to audition? I just need to move somewhere where I can just do what I do. And I was done. And I had an audition for a TV show, and Denzel was directing it. And he made me realize why I started it. And he was one of the reasons. And Sidney Poitier, same thing, just classy, And so I've had a lot of people around me that have inspired me to continue to do what I do and to do what I do. There are so many people in my culture that are just standouts at what they do, whether they have faults or not. They're people. All of us have faults. Where there's people, there's poop, I always say. But there's so many different things that people have done. Harold Washington, first Black mayor of Chicago, just his poise, how he handled himself, the things that he did for the city of Chicago. Michael Jordan, oh my gosh, you're talking about the king of swag. Nobody understood how smooth he was with where he came from and how he handled the press and how he handled people. And I've had so many people in my life who were just impressive. Prince, when I was younger, when I played football at the University of Minnesota, I was recruited at a very young age. I was 17 when I started college. One of my goals is like, man, I'd love to meet Prince. I got to meet Prince. I got to spend time and hang out with Prince, and I watched how he carried himself. And this is an iconic superstar, he's a real life superhero, and it's like I got to see how he was and how he carried himself. And more importantly, me being an observer and being very aware of my environments and stuff, I got to see why he was the way he was. And so that was really cool to be able to witness that. I got to, when I did homework, and I know I'm going on and on, but I got to give all this because these are all people who are people of color. I would do in college, people looked at me like I was crazy because I wasn't that typical football player, like, yeah, we're gonna go, lift weights, you're gonna be hit somebody. I mean, I had to do that, but I would do my homework at jazz bars. So I got to meet Colette Skinner, who was one of the most incredible jazz musicians in the world. She taught me so much. She was like my mom away from home. I got to hang out with Jack McDuff. Mose Allison. I mean, I got to meet these people who my dad had me listen to coming up. I got to witness and talk to Jimmy Scott. I got to spend time with these people, these icons of the civil rights movement, much less the whole circuit where they had to go down south and perform. And I got to be around people who experienced life in a way that was just unbelievably tough and fascinating, yet they made it, and I got to glean on how they did it. Billy Preston and just different people like that, and so I've been very blessed to be around people, but I've been extremely blessed to know when to shut up and listen and learn from people. So yeah, I'd love to sit in on this class or be a part of class if they have questions, whatever it may be. I'd love to be a part of that. So please, however you can arrange that, then yeah, that'd be awesome. Or Scott, right?
Yeah, Scott. He's an active member in our little community. So I will reach out to him, first thing tomorrow, and see what we can do what the best way to get that information. So I'll stay in contact with you because I'm sure that would blow his mind.
That'd be awesome.
One, as a fan, and two, as a teacher, to have that. That would be fantastic. I'm sure.
That'd be great.
So that was the last of the questions that we had prepared, John.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions? I'm here.
Oh man. Honestly, I've listened to a lot of interviews that you've been in via preparation or just as a fan, listening to of yours and of Final Fantasy, and just getting to talk with you and tell you how much I appreciated what you did for my life and for the game that I cherish. The things you have already done with interacting with my family, my kiddo, and the memories you've created. I honestly don't have questions. Just getting the opportunity to talk with you and say thank you and tell you how great you are is enough for me.
All right, cool. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and actually, so when I played the original Final Fantasy VII, I actually wasn't a big fan of Barret. And I don't know if you know this, but when that game was originally translated, it was like one dude in a basement. He got like the script in a week to translate the entire game into English. And it wasn't translated that well. And because of that translation, I wasn't really a big fan of Barret. And a big reason was because as a kid, I just saw him as this angry dude, and he reminded me.
That's exactly what I was trying not to be,
And he just reminded me of my dad, and my dad was just an angry man. And so then I watched these video series where the entire game was retranslated from Japanese into English more correctly. And Tim Rogers is his name, and he brought out all the little nuances within Barret's character and fleshed him out more. And after I watched that, and I realized I completely misunderstood who Barret was, what he was trying to say and the kind of person he was. And I think this was 2 years or so before the remake came out. And it got me so excited because I instantly fell in love with Barret right then through the retranslation. I was like, dude, this is a man right here. I love this guy.
That's cool.
And so leading up to the remake, Barret was who I was most excited all of his scenes. I was most excited for all of his scenes because I had realized I had misunderstood his character as a child. And
you got to send me that translation. That's awesome. Yeah, I want to see that.
I think it's 13 hours or something. But yeah, we'll get you a link.
I'll send it.
Yeah, we'll get you that link. And because of your performance within the remake and realizing how much I misunderstood his character, Barret is very firmly now 100% without shadow of a doubt my favorite character, hands down.
That's cool to hear, bro.
I love it. Thank you so much for everything, man. as a role model, the wisdom you've dropped on us today that I hope our listeners take to heart as well as the incredible performance and my favorite game of all time. Just thank you.
Thank you. Those words are cool. Thank you.
And while I know you can't talk about part 2 and we're not here to try and pry anything from you, we all know based off of playing the original, the things that are, going to be coming to fruition that lies ahead for Barret with Dine and his background and actually seeing the events that led to create the man we knew from part 1, Barret.
Do you though?
I mean, I know based off the original, and they've changed some things.
Confidence. Do you though?
I mean, they changed up a lot in the original, and so they might change things up. But we know that
we'll see it eventually. Eventually, we are going to see these scenes.
Yes. I love the confidence. We know, right?
We know.
Please.
Right. Exactly.
I know they won't do us dirty by not giving us Barret backstory. So I know we're going to get Barret backstory in some way, shape, or form. I hope.
There you go. That's more. You hope.
Yes, I hope.
I'm messing with you. I just wanted to hear your reaction.
But I cannot wait for the future of Barret, knowing about his backstory, knowing about all the other things. You know, we got to see such diverse range with you as Barret in part 1, and we know, quote unquote, know that there is more coming. There is even more to that iceberg to Barret, and I can't wait for it.
Well, once again, we got an unbelievably talented cast, an unbelievably talented team, writers, directors, translators, everybody. So it's going to be a blast. It's going to be a blast. I'm glad everybody's looking forward to it.
Oh yeah,
we all are. We are so impatient. Cannot wait, but we have to.
Yeah, I mean, I figured, like I was telling somebody when we had to delay the remake, but if you waited this many years, you shouldn't be complaining and whining and crying the way you are. You waited this long, you already know it's getting done. So just a little bit longer is not gonna hurt. It
won't hurt much.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about from the first time, from the very first.
Oh yeah.
It's like everybody's like, well, I can't believe they're doing it again. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, come on, man. We're doing it, right? It's gonna happen. Just, do you want a funky project? We saw that happen. We saw that happen with a very popular game that I was like really, really waiting for it to play. And I'm like, I can't wait to play this. Oh my gosh, Keanu Reeves is part of this. Oh my gosh. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute. What do you mean it's not working?
Yeah.
It's like, well, is that what you really wanted?
No.
You're damned if you do it and damned if you don't. So people are waiting to complain about, I can't believe we really want this. And it's like, yeah, but if you would have waited just a little bit more, instead of stop being so whiny and complaining, like, come on, baby, we got a long time, which we found out we had a serious long time over the COVID mess.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, come on, let's get it done right so we can actually enjoy it and enjoy it together.
Patience is a virtue.
It really
and waiting is hard.
Waiting is hard, but sometimes waiting.
That's the name of a book I read to Elias, regularly. Waiting is hard.
All right. There you go. Take that note, Papa.
It's story time. Let's read Waiting is Hard.
This is for me, Elias. This ain't for you today.
That'll be whenever Fair and I complain and are just like, when is Remake Part 2 going to happen? I'll just pick up my little one's book and I'll be like, all right, gotta read about waiting is hard.
Like, read me what John said.
Read me a bedtime story.
Right. Fair's gonna be like, you remember what John said? You better read.
Maybe we'll have to hire you to read us that book in Barret's voice.
That would be hilarious.
That'll be like the final podcast episode right before, not final, but the last one we do right before Remake Part 2. It'll be John Eric Bentley reading Waiting is Hard to our listeners right before it comes out.
Ty playing the role of Marlene. But anyway, go. You're about to say something else. I forgot. I was went on a tangent. So
oh my God, I don't remember what it was. The tangent. That was it. Our whole podcast is tangents. The tangent was too good. It was better than whatever I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Cool deal.
But that all being said, we don't really have much else for you, John. I want to thank you as myself, as a fan, as a lover of Final Fantasy VII and all things Final Fantasy, for taking the time to join us on this podcast. I know you're a very busy man, and I just can't thank you enough for the kindness, the wisdom, and your experiences that you shared with us with not only your life, but your family and Final Fantasy VII.
Cool, man. You got it. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
And it's great meeting you too, Fair.
Oh, you as well, man.
All
Tell
right,
your kids I said hey.
Oh, I will.
And everybody, please check out John Bentley on Twitter. His Twitter is, give me a second, you can edit this because I was not prepared, is at John Eric Bentley.
I don't even know it.
It's actually at John Eric Bentley. It's your full name. And Fayer, if everybody wants to check out what you're doing, where should we check you out?
You guys can find me at Feyerbrand across pretty much every social media platform: Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I have a TikTok, an Instagram. You can find me right here on the Magus Brothers podcast even. Didn't know if you knew that, but you can.
And if you're enjoying the Magus Brothers podcast, please check us out at magusbrothers.com or on Twitter. And please like, share, subscribe, review us. If you have iTunes, please review us on Apple Podcasts. The help that it provides to the algorithms is amazing. And please join our Discord. These questions were submitted by people in our Discord. So if you would like that option, please join and chat and join the community. Link to that is also on our website. And until then, everybody have a great evening.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.